So, thanks for joining us tonight, everyone. My name is Melissa Knibb. I am the Director of Physician Careers here at Resolve. And then we have Michael Gills in Business Development. Thanks
Everyone.
for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your night for this. And we hope this information is helpful and useful. That's the whole goal here, is just to help educate you guys and let you ask us questions. We've got quite a few years of experience doing this and running through the J-1 cycle. So we have, Michael and I were just saying, we've got to know when to cut it off because we could talk about this all night long. So I'll let Michael get started. He's going to go through getting started and the job search, and then I'll finish out with waiver tips and processing times. So take it away, Michael.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I just want to go ahead and reiterate what Melissa said. Thanks everyone for coming out. I know that most of you are very busy with your various programs, and it means a lot that you're taking some time to come out and chat with us and listen to some tips that we've accumulated over the years that might be helpful to you. So, we'll kind of start with the obvious. When you're on a J-1 visa looking for a waiver, most important thing that you can do is start the process early. And if you take one thing away from this webinar, I mean, that probably is the one thing I'd really want you to take away, is that it's so critical, so important to really start early for a variety of reasons. As you can see, we're advising that you start your search 18 to 24 months from graduation. Again, this all pertains to the people who are on the 2022 cycle. I know I've talked to some folks who are looking in 2023. That's still a ways out, but it's definitely a good time to start considering even that far out. And the reason you want to start early is largely because of the Conrad 30 program and the very strict dates and deadlines that it adheres to. A lot of you, may know that it opens up in that September-October timeframe. Depending on which state you're looking at, it can vary from one to the other. And the thing with the Conrad 30 program, it's very much a hurry up and wait scenario. You have to go through a process where you find the job, apply for the waiver, and then you just have to wait for that waiver to come back and be approved. And if it's not, you're likely going to find yourself starting from ground zero. So giving yourself a lot of runway is really important in case something does go wrong, in case you do get denied in a state. That's really critical. Some of you are going to be looking in states that are very competitive, meaning that they get a lot of applicants applying there every year, more than the 30 that are allotted. And some of these states may have very tight windows, maybe just a few weeks. Others might be first come, first served states, meaning they're granting the waivers to the first people who are applying. So there are a lot of reasons to start your search early, but it's probably the most important thing to take away from this webinar. So I want to kind of jump in and some of your residents, some of your fellows may be talking to you about what Conrad 30 is. You may already be aware of it. I'm sure it's a term that's been bandied about that you've all heard at least once or twice. So I'll do a really brief kind of cursory overview of it. And again, I should have mentioned this earlier, but we're going to be answering all questions at the end of the webinar. So the Conrad 30 program is probably the most popular waiver program out there if you're on a J-1 visa. Just like the name suggests, every state can grant up to 30 waivers. The program was created to fill the primary care shortage problem in medically underserved locations, or MUAs. Sometimes they're called medically underserved areas. Most states prioritize primary care positions over specialists. But the program does allow specialists to apply in most states. It's very rare to find a state that doesn't allow specialists. But it's also important to know what states consider specialists. Some states consider a hospitalist to be a specialist, others don't. So having a really good understanding of that and just knowing all of the individual rules and regulations of the states that you're interested in working, it's really important. And that's something that we can really help you with here. Over 10 years, 11 years, I'm sorry, we've built a really strong understanding of the Conrad program. We've kept really meticulous data over, all the individual state rules and regulations. We even keep backlogs of data, so we help clients know, what states are considered high-risk states, which states are a bit easier to get into. But going into your search, that's a really important thing to just be aware of. Just know the Conrad 30 program, study it before you start your search, and it's going to save you a lot of headache and a lot of hassle, going on. So next thing I want to talk to you about is finding J-1 eligible jobs. So some of this I covered, but it's important to reiterate: start your search early. Applications open up in the September-October cycle, or September-October for the 2022 cycle. We do get a lot of clients who come to us in December after fellowship match. We'll typically see a big surge. So you're going to see a big surge of people who are coming onto the market right around that time. So starting early, getting ahead of that curve, getting ahead of the people who are looking for the same jobs that you might be looking for, it's really, really important. There are some tools that you can use to make your job search a little bit easier. HRSA.gov is it's a really good site to use to determine J-1 eligibility. If you're kind of searching on your own and there's a location and you want to know whether or not it's eligible, that's probably the best source that you can use to find out. I should reiterate though, or I should stress that even if you do find out that a location is eligible to support a waiver, it does not always mean that it will. You cannot unfortunately compel a location to walk you through the entire process. Have an immigration attorney to help you apply for that waiver. So reaching out to the employer is always the next step. If you find out that they are eligible to support the waiver, reaching out to them and just asking, if they are going to support your waiver, if that's something that they do, is really important. And that's going to help you know which areas are medically underserved. Employer types that typically support waivers. I'm always a little bit hesitant to sort of give a broad strokes answer on this, because there are smaller groups that'll support your waiver. There are smaller outfits that'll do it. Typically, generally, broad strokes speaking, it's going to be larger institutions, academic institutions. They typically have more resources on hand. Oftentimes, they'll have an immigration attorney on hand that can walk you through the process. But I don't want people to be discouraged and think that there are small, private practices or clinics that aren't going to support their waiver. It's not a hard and fast rule. Just something to be aware of, going forward. Also, don't strictly rely on places like job boards or third-party recruiters. One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make when they're starting out on their job search is that what they'll end up doing is they'll just use resources from sites that their colleagues tell them about, places their friends advise them to go to. One of the best ways to find jobs is just by calling those places directly. If there's an area you want to work, and you want to find all the places that could potentially hire you, um, look them up online. Don't wait for them to post a job on a job board. Don't wait for a third party recruiter to post them. You're only going to be seeing about 25 to 30% of the market that way. Reaching out directly to the places you want to work, being inquisitive, asking them those questions. Do you support J-1 waivers? Are you in a medically underserved area? Are you hiring right now? Finding out who you can get your CV and cover letter to. It's gonna uncover a large part of the market that you never knew was there. And then, of course, networking is important. Job boards are a way you can find a lot of jobs that are ready to fill, places that are looking to hire a little bit more urgently. Be careful when you're going on job boards. You may end up seeing positions that are a little more remote, little further out from urban areas. You're oftentimes not going to find the more coveted positions and coveted areas through those resources. But definitely a place to go to. And I think that's about it from my end. I'll kind of wrap up at the end and talk to you a little bit about what we can do and what we can help you with, and how I think our services are uniquely tailored to help people on J-1 visa secure waivers. But I'm going to turn things back over to Melissa now, and she's going to go into a little bit more detail on some other aspects of some J-1 tips.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so this next slide is a map of the United States, and it has a lot of information on it. So this is actually something Michael was saying. I know he mentioned that we keep a lot of meticulous data, kind of historical data. Again, I've been with Resolve for a little over 8 years now, so I've been through that whole J-1 cycle many times. And so we started keeping track on an annual basis as to, how quickly does the state tend to fill? And, like Michael said, what are some of the more competitive states? There's a lot of things that you need to know, especially if you are doing a large scale search. There's some people that we work with that they only want to search in these 2 states, or they only want to be 60 miles of a certain city, which is probably going to be pretty tough for a J-1, but we can definitely try. But if you are searching in multiple states, that's where Michael is saying, really do your homework. The Conrad 30 program, there are 30 spots available per state. That is about the only consistent thing for each state. So every state has different guidelines, different timelines, different restrictions on specialists. Some states don't have any specialist restrictions, but there's just a lot that goes into it. And so all of these numbers and color coding, this is something that we do internally for us and for our clients to keep track throughout the fiscal year as to how many applications has that state received thus far. So no panicking. This is obviously still for this current fiscal year. We'll switch over here in a couple of weeks when states start to open in September and then obviously August. So but yeah, the numbers on this map are the number of applications that the state has received. And then some of the color coding has to do with this state is full, they're closed, they're not accepting any more Conrad applications. And this map and the numbers and the color coding, this is all just for the Conrad 30 program. The Conrad 30 is the most common way that you will probably find a waiver, but there's other waiver options out there, which I'm actually going to talk about here in just a minute. So lots of information on this map. You might have some questions that are popping up in your head if you see a state on here and you see some notes. So feel free to ask us more about that in the Q&A here at the end, but I will move on to waiver types. So like I said, Conrad 30 is by far probably the most widely known and most common, and it's very competitive because it has a cap on the number of the number of applicants that they can take, whereas all of these other alternative waivers don't really have, they don't have a deadline, and they can take as many as they want. They don't have that 30 cap. So that's why the Conrad 30 just kind of takes a lot more tracking and note taking and following up with to make sure that that state is still open. I would hate for you to start your job search in October and you want to be in Texas, because that is not going to happen for Conrad 30. And I know that Michael, October will get here and he will have people that call him and say, I want to be in Texas or Florida. And you kind of have to break their heart and say, that state is already full for this fiscal year. So a lot of things to know in those regards with the Conrad program. Some of the other common waivers that, again, don't have deadlines and they don't have a cap. So there is what's called an HHS, and you can do a little bit more research on that, but it's only going to be for primary care. And one of the guidelines of the HHS is you can't have more than a year of fellowship training. So it's just for primary care. One thing that did change for this coming fiscal year is that any facility, whether it be a hospital, private practice, if they have an HPSA score of at least 7, then that is applicable for an HHS waiver. So that's a little bit different than years prior, which I've already been talking to some Department of Health contacts. And it's kind of interesting because I think you're going to see a lot more of the primary care doctors going through HHS versus Conrad, because it is an option. And so by all means, that's, the Conrad 30 program was designed for primary care to meet those needs. But even prior to this change with HHS, we still saw states that had, sometimes 15 or 20 specialists that they accept and a smaller number of primary care. So, again, every state is different, but I think with those HHS changes, might make it a little bit easier for the primary care doctors, and it might open up some more spots for specialists for Conrad 30. And of course, I don't know that this is going to happen. This is all just, educational, historically speaking, me talking with, these Department of Health, but I can kind of see it maybe going that way. So that could be good. The next alternative waiver is a DRA. So that stands for Delta Regional Authority. And then there's also ARC that you'll hear about, Appalachian Regional Commission. So this can be primary care or specialist. The thing with these two are they're only specific states and they're only specific counties within those states. So DRA, there's 8 states, but it's only specific counties within those 8 states. And then ARC covers 13 states, but again, it's only so many counties within those states. So those are both an option. O1 waiver, again, is for primary care or specialists, but this is going to be a heavily research-based academic program, and this ultimately isn't going to fulfill your waiver needs. So, you might be able to do an O1 if you really want to stay in the state of California and you started your job search late. So California is full for Conrad, but you say, I have to be in California, and you're eligible for an O1 waiver. Maybe that would buy you a year to stay there, and then you could start your search earlier the next year. Sometimes when you do an O1 waiver, you'll hear people talk about like an O1 bridge, and that kind of means like maybe that employer will support your O1 waiver for a year, and then they'll apply for a Conrad 30 spot the following year. So you might end up being there 4 years. We say Canadian exception. If you're a Canadian citizen, there are a few loopholes. But again, ultimately, it's just buying you more time. So basically, like if you're a Canadian citizen, say that you were in that same scenario. If you can find an employer to support you, you could stay on an H-1B. But then again, ultimately, you would still need to fulfill your waiver commitment. So, but just something to keep in mind. And then you've got, of course, the Veteran Affairs, the VA hospitals. They can support primary care specialists, and they are their own waiver as well. So the VAs are excluded from the Conrad 30 program. Processing timelines. So this is another thing. You know, Michael said one of the most important takeaways: start your job search early. One of the another, you know, just very important thing to know is how, like, job search aside, how the whole process can go. It typically goes after you sign a contract. So your job search, you know, finding a job, depending on if you're, you know, primary care, obviously specialists are probably going to be a little bit more of a challenging job search. It might take you anywhere from 3 to 7 months to just complete your job search. So then you sign a contract. So you sign a contract with that employer. And then once you sign a contract, typically most immigration attorneys want at least like 30 days to prepare your waiver paperwork to submit to the Department of Health. And so, you know, a good timeline for signing a contract, if you're graduating 2022, is really going to be like end of August. So then, so end of August. So then you have September to prepare the waiver paperwork and then hopefully submit it on opening day on October 1st. And there are a few states that do start accepting applications in September. In all of the years I have been here, I don't think I've ever seen a state fill in September except for Texas. So Texas is only open for the first 2 fiscal weeks of September, and they typically always fill. We kind of talk about our historical data. I'm looking at that right now, and you know, I'm probably going to default back to like 2020 versus last year, because last year was just obviously not a good comparison to talk about timelines, because everything was kind of off. But anyways, get back on track here. So you sign a contract, your immigration attorney prepares the paperwork. Let's say he or she has it done in 30 days. And then on October 1st, you submit everything to the Department of Health. So the Department of Health is step one. And typically the Department of Health reviews take anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks. Now, there are a couple of states, if you are looking to be in New York or Massachusetts, I would encourage you to look more into their timelines, because they do not typically let you know if your waiver is going to be recommended or not until March. And so I understand if you have to be in those states, you have to be in those states. But if you're very proactive, you sign a contract now, you submit it, and you don't find out until March and you're denied, then you only have, you know, a few months until graduation. So it's pretty risky. New York and Massachusetts are. But typically most of the Department of Health are fairly quick at reviewing that and letting you know if you're going to be recommended or not. So if you get a recommendation at the Department of Health level, it is very uncommon for you to not be approved at the next 2 levels. So there's Department of State, and then the final USCIS approval. You know, if you make it past the Department of Health, you're probably going to make it through those 2. I think it would be very uncommon for you not to make it or make it be approved. So, but those 2 buckets can also take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. So overall timeline from the time you start your search to the time your final waiver is approved at the USCIS level, it could be anywhere from a year to a year and a half. Just, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but it can be a very lengthy process. So like Michael said, start your job search early and make sure you know if your state is still open for Conrad. Okay, I think we will open it up to Q&A here. We'll try to keep this about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll let Michael close us out at the end here. Michael, I'll just kind of read through this first question. We can kind of just go back and forth and answer them.
Sure.
So let's see. I just started endocrinology fellowship in the Cleveland Clinic Foundation, Ohio. What are the best options for me when I apply for J-1 waiver jobs in endocrinology? What platform should I use, and what states offer endo J-1 waiver jobs? So we aren't going to be able to tell you the answer to that as far as like who's hiring, what jobs are out there. Whenever we do a job search for our clients, that's where, you know, we're reaching out to employers to find out those things. And so what we're going to do is if you tell me I know you're at Cleveland Clinic, let's say you want to stay in Ohio, maybe. If you tell me you want to stay in Ohio and you're an endocrinology physician, then we are going to reach out to every eligible employer that could potentially hire you. So, like Michael said before, you know, job boards are, you know, a part of the search, but there are so many jobs that are uncovered just by reaching out to employers that never have a job posted. Those jobs that are posted online, you know, they, like I think Michael also said, they, you know, sometimes they're a little bit more rural, or they're tougher to hire for. And so they might not be as, you know, glamorous of a position, I guess you might say. So that's what the approach that I would take. I mean, you can use, like Michael said in the beginning, the HRSA.gov website. That is how you would determine if an employer is eligible to support you or not. And all you do is you go out to HRSA.gov, and you type in the employer's physical address where you would be working, and it's going to pop up. It's going to generate information that says, hey, yes, this facility is MUA, and then it'll even tell you like the HPSA scores and things of that sort. A lot of this information, you know, we have built into our database, and we've accrued over the years, and we've pulled in and attached to employers to make the job search, you know, go a lot smoother, I guess. But that, you know, that's what I would do. It depends on what state you're searching in, you know, what areas you're searching in, but that's kind of where to start.
I believe, Melissa, that this person who asked the question, based on another question that was asked, is looking at Ohio, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. You want to take that one, Michael?
Yeah. I'd have to take a look at the at some of the prior data for Ohio.
Or I can take it. I'm happy to take it.
Sure. So, yeah. If you want to jump into that one.
So Ohio is actually, I don't know how to say this. So they have been very, they're not consistent with their open date. So the Conrad 30 program, every state opens October 1st. It resets every fiscal year. There's a few states that open in September. And then last year, Georgia decided to open up in August, but I don't think they really got many applications in August because nobody probably knew they were open. But all of the states open October 1st. Does a state have to open and even take Conrad applications? No, that is up to the state. With the exception of Ohio, does every state open October 1st? So I don't know what their reasoning is, but like, for example, last year, they didn't open until April 8th. So yes, 6 months after everybody else.
Really unpredictable.
Very unpredictable. I think the year before they opened in like January. And, you know, I'm always reaching out to the Department of Health, you know, we might have a question from a client that we can't answer. And most of the Department of Health contacts are really great at, you know, kind of helping with any questions you might have. Ohio has never given me a great answer as to why they do that. So that's going to be one thing with Ohio that is potentially risky for you is they have a last year they didn't open till April. So that what I would do is encourage you to reach out to the Department of Health, contact, see if they have any idea of when they might open this year. And I think Ohio actually even has a form that you can fill out online if you have a contract, if you know you're going to be submitting a waiver. None of the other states, I don't believe, have anything like that. But I know Ohio does have that online too. So you could go online to Ohio Department of Health's website, and they should be able to give you some answers in those regards. All right, Mike, I'll let you take the next one up top.
Yeah, so are J-1 jobs only in rural areas? Is the only option for J-1 physicians in smaller areas / towns? The short answer is no. You can get a J-1 waiver in a more populated area. It's definitely possible. One of the ways you can do it is through, and Melissa knows more about this than I do, but through the use of flex spots. And to my understanding, a flex spot is an area that it is not technically underpopulated, but enough, or medically underserved even, but enough people from medically underserved areas come into that location enough so that it meets that designation. So you absolutely can get J-1 jobs in urban areas. It's, we see it regularly. Obviously, more rural areas, it's going to be more common, but it is certainly possible.
Yep. And kind of factoring in that HHS waiver, that's probably going to open up more urban areas as well. Are the blue states less desirable? So not necessarily. I wouldn't say necessarily so. I think Ohio, for example, we know why Ohio is still blue because they didn't open until April. So kind of an oddball state, right? I don't think I would say that the other states are less desirable. It might just be that they have less medically underserved areas. When we're working with our job search clients, Michael, you can probably back me up on this, but it seems like everybody wants to be in the Northeast, or they want Texas or Florida. And so you've just got your more popular states. Alaska, Hawaii, I think it's obviously they're a little bit more secluded. We don't get a big high demand there. And I think, again, it's also partly that they may just not have as many medically underserved areas. So, yeah, all of these states in blue, if you look at our historical data, like especially that chunk in the middle, like the not really considered the Midwest. Some of those states are considered the Midwest, but I feel like those are probably blue every year. They don't fill. California is the one exception on there. California always fills. So that last year was very odd in those regards. And then New Jersey. So New Jersey actually opened up to accepting specialist applications a couple of years ago. Prior to that, when I first started with Resolve, they were one of the few states that just said, we won't take specialist applications for the Conrad 30 program. But then I think it's been 2 or 3 years now that they do take them. So maybe it's just maybe a lot of employers or candidates don't know that still. So that's my answer there.
Yeah, from what I hear on calls with clients, a lot of times people want to work in those really populated states like New York, California, Texas, Florida, because they have family there. They know people that are in those states. So naturally, when you have high population states, you're just going to have more people who have friends there, who have family there, and you're more likely going to see a lot of people who want to work there for that reason too. So I don't think they're less desirable.
I agree.
Just not as many people know about them.
Yeah.
I can do this one here. So, are there states that open earlier than October 1st? Ideally, how much in advance should I have a job to apply for a waiver in any state? So yeah, there absolutely are states that open earlier than October 1st. I think for a while, October 1st was just considered the federal reset date, but there were certain states that were the exception to that, and now, I mean, a whole litany of them opened before October 1st. I don't know exactly which ones do. Melissa knows that better than I do. Do we have an active list of all the ones that opened before October?
Yeah, there's about 10 that open up for applications in September. Just real quick, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Virginia. And then Texas, like I was saying earlier, Texas is open. So, for example, this year they open like that first Monday business day of September, and they're open for 2 weeks. And so, in years past, they typically fill within those 2 weeks. If they don't, then they'll just open back up for applications. And I mean, I would say that they'd probably fill by early October if they didn't fill in September. Let's see here. I am a rheumatology fellow in my second year. Can I do one waiver in one state and the rest of the 2 years in another state to complete a total of 3 years? No, I don't believe so. So basically, how it works is you finish training and then you start your waiver job, and that will be for 3 years. You have to do all 3 years of your waiver job at the same employer. That actually makes me think of another question. Sometimes people ask, can I have a waiver application submitted in Missouri and then a backup option in New Mexico? No, you can only have one waiver application submitted at a time. So let's say you do want Texas, for example, you get a job there, sign a contract, submit your waiver application in September. Well, the nice thing about Texas is they're going to let you know pretty quick whether you're recommended or not, right? So you're probably going to know that you're not if you're not recommended by mid to end of October. And so you've still got time to start over and, apply in a different state, but you can only have one application submitted at a time, and you do have to complete all 3 years with that employer. When you sign the contract with them, that's going to be in the contract. The only way you might be able to do that, which you don't want this to happen, but we have worked with some clients on J-1 transfers, and that is not it's not the type of scenario you want to be in. It's going to be you're in a bad situation, like you're being mistreated. There's they call it's very extenuating circumstances that you have to prove to get out of that job and transfer to a different location. But we have helped a few clients that unfortunately have needed our help in that scenario, and that is a thing. But yep, all 3 years at one place.
Okay. Is there any place where we can find the data that the state Conrad 30 spots for 22 that have been filled? It sounds like you're looking for like sort of like live tracking for 2022, similar to what you're seeing on this map. The short answer is through us. I know that's we're kind of giving tips for where you can find a lot of this data elsewhere. I don't know of a lot of other places you could find live 2022 information.
The answer for that is none right now, right? None of the states are open yet. But once states do start to open, unfortunately, there is not one place online that you can go to find this information. You literally just have to go to the Department of Health for each state. And honestly, if probably a large percentage of the states don't have an online update, but you could call and find out what the update is. So yeah.
Yeah, we reach out to these places individually and have contact. So it's I guess you'd call it semi-proprietary. You know what we sort of built here. Yeah, unfortunately, there really isn't another place like us for this.
We try to reach out to them monthly at minimum, and then just kind of as needed based on what our clients' needs are. But yeah, you can go to the Department of Health contact, and you should be able to find out that information. And some do have an online update, so that's nice. What is the timeline for an O1? So the thing about the O1 is, let's say you get, I'll answer that first and then read the rest of your question. Um, if you are going for an O1, the processing timeline is actually pretty quick as far as like the initial processing. So the initial processing can take like a couple of weeks, but then it still has to go on to like Department of State and USCIS level. But I would say you're probably looking at closer to like 3 to 4 months, 3 to 5 months versus maybe like 6 to 8 months with a Conrad. So that's definitely a question for an immigration attorney too. They would be able to advise you a little bit better on that. But I do know that the initial processing time is actually pretty quick. It's like 15 days. And a lot of this stuff, you know, Michael and I, we had that in our opening slide. We're definitely not immigration attorneys. But we have tons of experience over these past years, and a huge part of our clientele is our J1s. And so, you know, if I can't answer a question, if the Department of Health can't answer a question, we have immigration attorney. We don't have one here at Resolve, but I have some contacts that I've met over the years that are really great at helping answer a lot of our questions. So if you have an immigration attorney that you're already working with, definitely ask them. And when you sign an employment contract, 9 times out of 10, your employer is going to provide that immigration attorney for you. And so, you know, start asking those questions with your employer that you're going to sign with early. I encourage you to be very proactive and not process and not let it you don't want anything to be delayed on your end or on their end, and that's obviously going to affect you. Is it possible to start VA waiver and O1 waiver for the VA hospital at an adjacent hospital, respectively, keeping one as plan A and the other as plan B, or do I have to be rejected from one to even start the other process? So you don't necessarily have to be rejected to start the process. You just can't have both applications submitted as at once. And that is for Conrad, ARC, DRA. For O1 and a VA, not 100% sure, but I would think it would probably be the same scenario. But let's say you were going for an O1 and you've submitted the paperwork for it and it's just processing, you're waiting. That doesn't mean you can't start reaching out to VAs and, you know, applying to jobs. You know, if you're just doing phone interviews, you know, kind of keeping some leads working, that's smart. Everybody's scenario is different. So, you know, what I might tell a person that's searching in Texas, I might not have the same plan for the person in New York, because this person in Texas is going to know whether their waiver is recommended way before the person in New York. So your plan is different. Like your New York person can't be actively searching for jobs in October. Those jobs aren't going to be there in March. That scenario is not going to work out. So I hope that answers your question. You can definitely, you know, it's good to have multiple offers. It's good to have multiple phone interviews, multiple on-site interviews. It's for sure good to have a plan B and maybe plan C sometimes. But with people on visas, that gets a little tricky because you've got to wait to be, like you said, not recommended for like the Conrad 30 program. For the VA and O1, I would say maybe do a little bit more research on that, but I think it's probably going to be a similar scenario.
And I'll add to this by just reiterating we're not immigration attorneys here, so some of these questions we may have to kind of defer you to somebody with more of a legal expertise in the area. The next question: can the dependent of an O1 visa work? I'm on a J1 and my spouse is a resident on a J2 EAD. If I move on to an O1, can my spouse sign a job? I'll be very honest. I'm not going to try to answer that because I don't know, and I don't want to provide any misinformation on that. Melissa, do you have an idea on that? Because I don't want to give any kind of misdirection there.
I'm really not sure either. I would say talk to an immigration attorney on that one. Yeah. If a waiver is denied, how long does typically an O1 bridge take? So if your waiver is denied, you have to remember, you still have to find an employer that will support an O1. So like if you go with an employer and maybe it's just a super competitive state like Florida will get close to 60 applications. So say you go for a waiver, Conrad waiver in Florida, and it's denied. You're again probably going to know by like November because October fills pretty quickly, and they're going to get back to you pretty quickly. So at that point, if the employer that you are going through for the Conrad waiver is going to support your O1, then that really shouldn't. It's kind of what we talked about earlier. It's just the O1 processing time, which is a couple of weeks. But then you still have those other two levels to go through, the state and the USCIS. So you still have a few months, but yeah.
Yeah. So the next question, I just started a body imaging fellowship in Johns Hopkins. I want to apply in the Virginia, Maryland area. What are my best options? For applying for a job or looking for a job in that area, I would follow some of the prior tips of obviously looking at recruitment websites and job boards and keeping your eyes peeled for jobs there, but really mainly focusing on finding the locations in that area that you'd like to work at, and just checking to see if they are J1 eligible. Reaching out to them, seeing if they're able to onboard somebody on a J1 visa. If they've got an immigration attorney, that's even better. And just sort of take that approach. I would also add that, and we're going to be jumping to this shortly, but I'm going to be talking about sort of outreach and ways that people who are listening in can chat with me on a one-on-one basis about how our services I think might help you find a job. If you don't end up using our service, that's the way I would recommend. I'd recommend going out and reaching out to these locations individually, but definitely staying tuned and chatting with me one-on-one, down the road, because I think we can help you out with that.
Yeah. To this question, the VA waiver longer than 3 years. So the answer is no. It's most of the VA contracts are actually only a year. And then they'll typically just renew it for another year. So the VA contracts, I believe, are typically only like 1 year. And so I haven't had a ton of clients that signed a VA contract, but I'm pretty sure that those are just actually yearly, and then they renew them. So it shouldn't be longer than 3 years.
What is the best approach for waivers in academic programs? So academic programs, they're hard to find jobs for online based on the way that they're funded or the way their resources are allocated. They don't really post on job boards or reach out to third-party recruiters a lot. So a lot of people, I think, are under the sort of misconception that those jobs just don't exist or they're incredibly hard to find. By using a cold contacting methodology and reaching out to those places individually, um, uh, which, admittedly is a large part of what our service is. We've actually placed a lot of clients in academic institutions. I think just for hospitalists in the past few years, I think we've placed around 10. So we've been really successful there, and if you can utilize that cold contacting method, you're probably going to have a lot more success than going through those traditional job board routes.
I'll skip the national interest waiver question, Michael, and you can do the DC one. The national interest waiver is the national interest waiver similar to Conrad 30? Honestly, I also have not had, I don't know that I've had any clients go a national interest waiver. The one thing that I do know is that it's a 5-year contract. So that one is longer. It's a 5-year contract. I know it doesn't have a cap. I know there's no deadlines, just kind of like the other waiver options that we talked about. But other than that, I would probably have to look up some information to educate myself on that one, or re-educate myself on that one a little bit more. But I do know it's 5 years.
So I'm looking for a waiver in the Washington, D.C. Area. Only have 9 months left. What are the chances? So yeah, the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area is it's a place that really filled up, or at least Virginia and Maryland did for the 2021 cycle. But the 2021 cycle was kind of weird. We saw California didn't even fill up. Not a lot of good answers as to why some of those things happened. There's some theories that we have that maybe a lot of people did another year of residency or fellowship rather because of COVID, and we very well may get a lot of people looking in all states for this cycle. So it's going to be a little tough, but I would say, if you're starting your search now, it's it would be possible.
Do you work with just J-1 or all kinds of visas? We work with all kinds of visas. So we've worked with J-1s, we've worked with a couple J-2s, I think. We've worked with H-1Bs. We've worked with people on green cards. We've worked with the J-1 transfers, like I mentioned earlier. Again, that's not a situation you want to be in, and it's definitely not a situation that's easy to get out of. But we've had a lot of success with the J-1 transfer. So we work, and we've had some other like research visas. I'm not gonna say it right, so I'm not gonna. I think it has an E in it. We've worked with a couple of clients in those regards too. So yes, we can work with any type of visas.
And for this last question, how do you decide if the academic center is in a provider shortage area? I don't know if there's a special way we would.
I think you would do that HRSA Gov.
Yeah, that's what I would assume, is just use the same resource, HRSA. Yeah.
And you want to put in the physical address of where you will be working. So that's the key there to see if it's MUA or not. Awesome, lots of questions. That was good. And right about our time frame. We'll let Michael finish us out here with that last slide. Thanks for all the questions. That was really great, guys.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I just want to wrap up by saying, again, thanks for taking time to chat with us tonight. Really means a lot that all of you are showing this interest. We love helping J-1 doctors find jobs, advocating for doctors. It's super important to us. So great to have everyone here. We offer a premium J-1 job search service here at Resolve. It really is tailored to the individual, but all in all, we help you with really the full life cycle of your job search. We help you from developing the CV, helping you with changes there to make it stand out, developing a search strategy, for you. talking to you about your locations, the places you really want to work. And then, I was talking to everyone here earlier about cold contacting and reaching out to employers individually. It's something we can do on a really massive scale for you. Help you get multiple offers, really leverage those into great jobs. And I'd love to chat with everyone here about that on a one-on-one basis. So we're going to be sending out calendars so you can book a time to chat with me. And I look forward to answering some of your more personalized questions in more depth there, and getting to know you better.
We actually had that question in the chat, Michael. How can I contact your team? So I just posted the calendar link that you guys can use to book a time to speak with someone. And you will also get a follow-up email tomorrow with all of this information and that link. So you should be able to just click on the link and book a day and time that works for you. And then Michael or someone on our team will give you a call.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.